Hi, welcome to Mountain Gym Card Collectibles. And today I want to take some time and talk about something that most sports card channels typically never talk about. And what is that? Psychology, you know. And the reason why I want to focus on psychology has to deal with the way that I look at the hobby, okay? And, maybe the people will come at me with pitchforks and torches for saying it. But when I look at this hobby, I used to wake up, in the morning, excited to be involved in the sports card collecting hobby, all right? And lately, more or less since Topps Fanatics has taken over, the whole thing for the most part with sports cards, with licensed products, I just kind of look at it like, oh, it doesn't really feel like a hobby to me much anymore. And a lot of it has to do with psychology, Um, the greatest thing about the sports card hobby prior to 9/11 was its affordability. And with any hobby, it has to be affordable. I mean, I've seen like Jay Leno and his $1 million car collection, all these crazy cars. I get it. But, I never wanted to be someone like Jay Leno. I always liked the sports card hobby in the 1980s and 1990s because it would motivate you to wake up in the morning because you'd have a chance to fulfill your collection or, find that card that you've been hunting down, and you're not going to spend a lot of money doing it. So, a lot of my resentment towards sports cards has to do with just a lot of basic psychological factors, I should say, that revolves around motivation. And like it says here, Google Gemini AI overview. Motivation is a complex psychological state influenced by biological, environmental, and mental factors. When drive diminishes, it is often due to a combination of these elements acting as barriers. Yes. So if you're losing motivation in the sports card hobby, don't blame yourself. You're not alone. I'm with you, and I've been doing this for a long time. But I've had to ask myself, why am I more excited to wake up in the morning and hit the stock market, look at my own kind of creative business ideas, and basically just sweep sports cards to the side and move on with my life, Why is that happening? It's not just me. You can dig through the comments and a lot of social media, and I'm not alone. So, just so you know. So, like it says here, fear of failure or success. Okay? The anxiety of not meeting expectations can lead to procrastination or complete avoidance of tasks. Okay. Got it. Now, not meeting expectations. Okay, well, that's basically the hobby to this day. I mean, what is the hobby? Well, you got Tom Brady, you have all these big fixtures, Michael Rubin, Ken Golden, all this and that. These are not guys, I really gave a shit about prior to 9/11, 2001, for the most part. They just did what they did. They were who they were, but now we're being guided by, a greedy corporation known as Topps Fanatics, who's basically sucking all the oxygen out of the room so that they can control the secondary market and get all the money for themselves. Okay. So I think that's the biggest factor why I'm just not excited about sports cards anymore. Perfectionism. Setting unrealistically high standards can make starting a task feel so overwhelming that it triggers all or nothing thinking and self-criticism. And, I kind of view that word towards the sports card hobby differently, in the manner of, yes, I would like to complete my collection. I like to collect cards. Oh, this card's 20,000, this card's 100,000, this card's 1,000,000, this card's 2,000,000. Oh, wait a sec. What happened to the hobby? Oh, yes. Greed took it over. And so I'm just not as interested. There we go. Low self-efficacy. A lack of belief in one's own ability to succeed significantly reduces the willingness to persist through challenges. Yes. It's almost impossible to complete a collection these days because you have to be like a billionaire, And so, once again, lack of motivation, lack of autonomy. Oh man, boy, this just comes right out when it comes to the sports card TCG hobby for the most part. Motivation often suffers when individuals feel they have no control over their tasks or environment, leading to a sense of self-dictatorship and resentment. Yes. I mean, if you think you have autonomy in the sports card realm, good luck. I don't care who you are. I mean, you could be a millionaire and still you're going to get priced out somewhere along the way with this horse shit. Negative self-talk. Constantly reaffirming that you are unmotivated can cause that state to become part of your identity, making it harder to break the cycle. Yeah. Put the big L on my forehead. I still haven't been monetized on YouTube. I still can't get those, $1,000, $20,000, $50,000 cards I want, $100,000, whatever, $1 million. Yep, got me there. And then we hit these other things, And this thing really goes down, but fatigue and burnout. Fatigue and burnout. Prolonged stress and a lack of adequate breaks lead to emotional and physical exhaustion, severely reducing focus and energy. Yeah. When you're having to focus so much on sports cards and all the big winners always, making the big sales, and you're asking yourself, why doesn't anyone collect and celebrate their collection anymore? You tend to get burnout and fatigue. But some of these towards the bottom seem to ring true for sports cards. Environmental and structural factors. Absence of clear goals. Without specific attainable targets, it is easy to feel lost or overwhelmed by the scale of a project. Yeah. I just don't know how any, collector could go into this market, believing in themselves, with the way that the prices are in a lot of the best cards, And so, it's easier to walk into, say, a stock brokerage or, I like to invest stocks. My goals are attainable for stock investing in the morning. It's affordable to invest in the stock. I make a profit. It's exciting, And I guess that's the way I look at profit. If you want profits, why don't you stick with the stock market? Why do you have to come and ruin card collecting? Poor environment. A cluttered, dark, or unsupportive workspace can create mental clutter that zaps productivity. Now, let's face it. The sports card community isn't really a community at all. It's just a bunch of people that tend to cannibalize and attack each other for the most part. It's all about the money anymore. It's not about collecting or, being nice to your neighbor, or anything like that. It's so money driven these days, And I go, is it a hobby or is it kind of like a trading market, like a stock trading market? And to me, it feels more like a stock trading market that's not a stock trading market, The thing about, buying stocks is a lot of stocks that I purchase, that are penny stocks. I get a warning from the brokerage, that says if you buy this, it's not our fault if you lose all your money, basically. And hey, I understand that. You're never going to get that buying sports cards, You're just going to get a bunch of grifters saying, yeah, buy, Why? Because it's all about the money. It's not about the cards. Social pressure and comparison. Broadcasting goals too early or comparing your journey to the highlight reels on social media can create debilitating anxiety and a sense of inadequacy. Yeah, definitely. And that's the thing about social media and sports cards is, I've seen so many people who are proud to put their sports cards up on X, and there's always someone coming along and telling them that their cards are a piece of trash, that aren't valued, they're overprinted, this or that. A lot of that comes from, I've had cards that I really liked from the junk wax era, I was proud of, and you basically just get laughed out of the room. Why? Because there isn't a lot of value there, because it's all about value. And lack of meaning. If a task does not align with your core values or lacks a clear why, it becomes difficult to sustain long-term effort. And really, my core values cannot stand up for people who are selling cards for millions of dollars or breaking companies who, get sports card allocation given to them over consumers and all this and that. And so if you're asking yourself why you're losing motivation in the sports card or TCG hobby or non-sports card hobby, a lot of this may be having an effect on your mental state, okay? And I don't blame you. I really don't, because I'm feeling the same thing. And I'll say this, and I know that it tends to piss a lot of people off, but I've always believed that people who are born on Earth are only meant to be rich and wealthy. Because I have seen all the suffering caused by rich and wealthy people towards everybody else, okay? And so I go, you know what? If you're not going to be born rich and wealthy, why are you being born, period? To suffer? I believe that wholeheartedly in my heart. That if you're not born a rich person, for the most part in this world with a rich family, and you're not rich, somewhere along the way, you're going to suffer in this world. I wish it wasn't that way. Some might say that's the natural order of things. Hey, that's great. But the natural order of things tends to make a lot of people lose motivation, including me. I mean, the way I wake up anymore is, yeah, I'd be having a great day if I was a millionaire or if I was a billionaire. Am I wrong to say that? When I think of sports cards, in my mind, I think pre-9/11, when it was a hobby for the most part. Yeah, post-9/11, it stayed a hobby, but, by the 2010s, it started to really feel different, to me anyway. Like I wasn't good enough for the hobby at that point in time. Your job isn't good enough. You don't make enough money to be able to be part of this hobby. Okay. And I'm like, okay, well, I was always part of the hobby. But basically, the rich people starting in the 2010s kind of started to push that broom and brooming people out. All right. And so when I look at pictures from the 80s or 90s, that's what I call the hobby. That's when it was a hobby. Remember, a hobby really has to be affordable for the most part to be, a popular hobby, Like look at Jay Leno with all of his cars, Most people can't do that. They don't have the place to store them. They can't afford those big, massive Bentleys and Ferraris and everything else that he has, Corvettes, whatever Jay Leno has, That is really for a very small percentage of people. And unfortunately, I feel like that's what's happening to sports cards currently. So, 1980s, 70s, whatever, 60s, 50s. I would say, the 1900s. Sports cards were a hobby. Definitely. Can't say they weren't. I mean, and it was a popular hobby. It really was. And when I think of, baseball cards, sports cards, I think of this period of time when, you didn't have to come from a big, rich family as a kid to be able to buy sports cards. I feel like today you have to. You have to come from a big, rich family to get into sports cards. But when you wake up in the morning, when you think of sports cards, TCG, non-sports cards, what do you think of currently? Do you think of the most wealthy people imaginable coming into the hobby and taking advantage of the situation? Do you think of an industry filling its pockets up with the pain of poor people? Do you think of big breaking companies like Backyard Breaks who get all the allocation for sports cards over the consumers who really want a piece of it? Is that what you think of? I mean, I'm just going to click Backyard Breaks here. What do they have? They have, just over 800,000 followers on TikTok. Hey, that's great, But here's the thing. These breaking companies became the hobby, whether you want to admit it or not. And so the hobby to me has become a spectator sport. Oh, you want to do the sports card hobby? Oh, well, how much money do you have? Oh, well, I guess you're going to be a spectator. And more people are becoming spectators for the hobby now, aren't they? The way that the monopoly known as Topps Fanatics shows out their product, the people like Backyard Breaks and all these other big breaking companies over consumers. And to me, I guess this is what has caused so much decreased motivation for me for sports cards. And the reason why I just kind of laugh at this stuff is, well, you can do so much. You can start a business. You can do stock investing. I could get back into probably fishing as expensive as, all these endless wars that I have to live through in my lifetime, and gas prices going to the moon beyond every time. I could probably afford to go fishing more than ripping open boxes of sports cards that are selling out the gate for over $1,000 a lot of the time. And so I believe that the harshest thing that I've had to realize in the sports card hobby is the fact that it's no longer a hobby at all. Many will call it an industry. I tend to call it a trading market because, I remember growing up and seeing kids, like say the 1986 Barry Bonds traded rookie card from Topps, There's no way that my friends would ever sell that damn card. You probably could have offered $1 million to that kid back then in 1986, 87. Nope. This is for my collection. This is to go and hang out with my friends and we all show each other our cards. We have fun doing it, Someone's parents order some pizza in the process. We're hanging out. We're doing other things. It's a hobby, and no one's going broke doing it, I mean, I was more excited to chase cards in the 80s than I am now. That's for sure. Why? Well, I could afford it as a kid, not even working. I would just ask my mom for, $2 or $3 in the summertime. I'm off to the local, gas station, convenience store. Hey, I've got cards. It was a hobby. It was fun. It was exciting. There's no way I would ever part with a lot of those cards. My friends would never part with those cards. Nowadays, it's just run. Get it slabbed up at PSA. Put it on the market. Sell it for as much as possible. It doesn't feel like a hobby anymore. It just feels like kind of a copycat stock market, wannabe trading market that wants to pretend and call itself a hobby. No, it's not a hobby anymore at all. And so if you're losing motivation, I can relate to you. I've told you, what I'm excited for in the morning, And it sure as hell isn't sports cards at this moment in time. Why? Well, because Topps Fanatics is taking it over. So anyway, are you feeling a loss of motivation for the hobby because it's really not a hobby anymore? And if you are, I understand why. I never thought that someone my age would be forced to move away from the USA. It's almost like the USA's become like the hobby, isn't it? I've been priced out of the sports card hobby. Hell, I've been priced out of the USA. I can't afford any more wars, I mean, I have been through so many wars in my lifetime. I've never fought in any, but I always feel the downward effects. And what are the downward effects? Well, I can't afford much of anything, I mean, gas anymore up here in Montana is just out of the roof. The state of Montana likes to make life, the legislature especially likes to make life a living hell, for working class people because they're all about these kind of rich billionaire types. And so overall, I believe that's why I just don't have the motivation like I used to for sports cards. And I've always said, this current market just feels like it's only meant for millionaires. And you can get that from looking at box prices, slabs, whatever. You can get that from the type of individuals who are in this space right now where they don't care about the cards. All they care about is selling it for money. So anyway, how do you feel about this? Leave some comments. And I hope you have a great day. I'm out of here. Bye.